Each year, we invite students who participated in Earth Institute-funded research to share the incredible work they have conducted with the Columbia community. Today's event is meant to celebrate that work and the really talented students who have done that research over the course of the year. This year, we funded over 100 undergraduate, graduate, and PhD students from over 20 degree programs through the internship program, the undergraduate research assistant program, the Millennium Villages project, the travel grant, and a variety of other fellowship programs that we sponsor. And today we have 60 students here to represent the work they've done on 40 different projects. Student research that takes place all over the world, from Senegal to Fiji, from India to El Salvador, and even sometimes in Brooklyn, where I'm from. At home, hands-on experience is gained by students in a lot of our research centers, including the Center for Research on Environmental Decisions, CEASON, the Lenfest Center for Sustainable Energy, the Columbia Water Center, and just a variety of others, including, of course, the world-famous Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory.
It's thrilling what you're doing. You're helping a lot of different places to understand better the challenges. There are a lot of lessons that come from this, and I think it's fair to say, if you walk around the room, the diversity of what you're doing is also astounding. We are bringing together a tremendous range of knowledge to solve very complex problems, and you're just in the cutting edge of it. Bravo, congratulations, wonderful.
Again, congratulations to all the students and their mentors. Thank you.
The project that I worked on consisted of synthesizing wastewater in the lab and then running it through a nitrifying reactor that acted on purifying it by changing the ammonia in the water into nitrogen gas. And that was done through bacterial species and organic matter. And the most interesting finding about this whole project is looking at the final result of getting waste-free, clean water through that whole process. And I think it's the most interesting conclusion because it lends insight into a more renewable and cleaner method for purification, which can be potentially applied on a larger scale.
I had the opportunity to work in the organic geochemistry lab with Pradika Polisar on a paleoclimate project investigating when and how grasslands can expand, and I was looking specifically in India. I became interested just because I think paleoclimate is such a cool tool, and it really, with all of the change that's happening now with atmospheric CO2 and global temperatures, we really have to understand what happened in the past to understand what's going to happen in the future. And it was cool looking specifically at vegetation because that's what your landscape looks like. I'm definitely going to use my research experience in my future career development. Before the Earth Intern program last summer, I didn't really know about paleoclimate or how our climate system works, and it just really gave me a sense of the scale of how important it is. And so my career is definitely going to be in environmental studies, and that was just instrumental in making me understand that how any environmental career is important.
Through my research project, I was reviewing environmental impact statements. So I was looking at into the question of whether these government-mandated impact statements looked into whether climate change was affecting a proposed project, or if a proposed project might be affecting climate change in any way. So through this project, I definitely gained a lot of concrete research skills. These documents can be incredibly dense, upwards of 600 pages long. So it was a lot of sort of knowing where to look, knowing what to search for in the document, and I learned a lot about a critical analysis. I think the most important thing about this research project is that it's focusing on an issue that's being relatively ignored right now. So the Council for Environmental Quality right now has introduced draft guidelines for what these environmental impact statements should be looking at, specifically in regard to climate change. But since it's a draft, nothing can be mandated. So this project is really vital because it's looking into this issue that government agencies are right now allowed to ignore.
This project, it's a long-term project, so when I joined the team, my mentor and advisor, this project has already been developed by them, so it was kind of good for me as a student to kind of be involved in the work that they have done already and see how I can contribute to it. I was mostly working in a lab, so as a nurse science major in sustainable development concentration, I was not usually have an opportunity to work in a lab, and research assistantship through the Earth Institute helped me to work in a lab specifically at Alamandurity Earth Observatory. The most interesting thing is that I've come up sort of with an idea, and we worked in the team with my mentor. So we tried to use small magnets to use them in the samples to try to clean industrial dust. And that was kind of an interesting opening for me because I never thought that I would do something like this.
So from my research project, I learned how to process deep sea sediment cores. So we take samples from each centimeter of the core, and then we process them. So we separate the foraminifera shells from the mud, and then we pick the shells under a microscope. And then I learned how to load the foraminifera into little vials so we can use the mass spectrometer to analyze them for carbon and oxygen isotopes. My research project could be further developed by sampling more of the core because we didn't find many foraminifera in some of the samples, so we're sampling more of the core in the same section. And also we can look at other cores to see if we find the same data. I'm looking specifically at the biological pump in the ocean, and we could try to connect this with the volcanic activity as well.
I am really fascinated at the convergence between science and communications, and I think it's very important that scientists and institutions that fund science use alternative methods other than peer-reviewed journals to distribute their content. I gained a lot of knowledge about how my previous experience can apply to the sciences. So that was a really fascinating and engaging part of the program.
My research was about the quality of census data around the world. What GPW does is collect census data from around the world and compile it into a single data set. And I was looking for evidence of the quality of that data so we can know how good the whole data set is. So I was interested in this project because I study economics and political science, unlike most people at the Earth Institute. And in those fields are completely obsessed with using data to prove that they have some sort of validity. But a lot of times we download these giant data sets from the internet without really knowing how good the data is. That means we don't really know how good our findings are. So I think the idea of producing a high quality data set to start out with so that people can do quite high quality research using that data is really important. What I found most interesting was the general trend away from using census data. Collecting censuses has gone on for about 6,000 years. It's one of the most basic functions of government, but today we don't really need to go knock on everyone's doors anymore. A lot of governments are instead using what's called a population register, where they use information that they already have, like birth certificates, death certificates, other forms of bureaucratic information. They use that in lieu of conducting an actual census. So this, thousands of year old tradition is now no longer really necessary, and I found that trend to be fascinating.
I went to Senegal to the Botou Millennium Village project, and I was working with education. And the most rewarding aspect of my research was being able to give information or hand information to a village that did not have this information beforehand because they are so far from the capital city. And it was a pleasure for me to be able to give them this information and help them modernize their schooling system, which really needs to be modernized, and they really wanted to do it too because they knew they were falling behind, but they didn't know how they could do the process of modernizing the schools. And that was very good because all of the leaders of the communities were very interested, and I gave them the tool to do this.
I was working with Millennium Villages Project in Malawi to create a pilot program based on how to improve programming and teacher training surrounding early grade local language literacy programming. And so we were assessing students, did a baseline assessment, a midline, and an endline assessment, and we were also conducting teacher training workshops. But I was very interested in working in the education sphere in developing countries, and because of my interest in East Africa, where I had work experience, I was interested in working with Millennium Villages Project in some of their villages in that area, and so an opportunity arose to go to Malawi, which is where I did my research. One of the main things I was really hoping to get out of the research project that I did as a complement to my ongoing studies at Columbia SIPA was field experience. I had had field experience before as a teacher in the Peace Corps, but really utilizing the technical skills that I gained from my courses at SIPA. Things having to do with data collection, data analysis, using some of the current tools that are really growing in their areas of practice and applying those in a field setting.
I did my research with Columbia Water Center, focusing on low-cost technology to improve productivity of agriculture, of farming, basically. And through this research, I got an insight into the precision agriculture, where we try to leverage low-cost technology and the softwares that is available online, mainly in open source platform, and to improve the plant's health and production in the farm. We used softwares that I never used before. I collaborated with people that I was not aware of before, and we used actually a technology where it's a very low-cost technology. It's the cheapest camera we were using, changing a little bit of filter system inside the camera, and I believe that this kind of low-cost technology I'll be able to take to the field and help the farmers and subsequently work towards alleviating poverty and hunger.
I'm currently finishing to write my senior thesis for my urban studies major, which is dedicated to sustainable urban development in Amman, Jordan. I noticed that the term sustainable development and renewable energy, all these rhetoric field was appearing very often, and obviously Jordan is a developing country, and what you see when you live in Amman is that it's mostly a lot of traffic congestion, a lot of pollution, not a really scarce resources of water. So I just wanted to inquire into the reality of the discourse, the discourse on sustainable development, which is really important.
In the summer of 2014, on an oral health and hygiene project in Clerical, Ethiopia, which intends to provide the village and the local primary school students a set of education program about oral health. Also, we provide a educational program to the local health service providers. There is still a gap between what is taught and what should be taught. Oral, since their education on health and body is just at the beginning, but oral health is oral health, oral diseases is very common in all societies. There is a need to add some elements about this in the formal educational program, and to our project can be further in this way to seek for the public sector's collaboration.
What I found most interesting about my research was the social component of being in Rwanda, and how the recent history of their genocide affected the ability to interact with the community and the MCDO project, and how heavy the social component was in being able to really successfully execute and implement. I think my project could be developed further with additional assistance with monitoring and evaluation and capacity building. The culture of Rwanda is very prideful, and they would not necessarily tell you if they did not know something. You would send over documents and things of that nature to be reviewed and edited, so on and so forth, and it wouldn't get done, not necessarily because they didn't want to do it, but because they maybe didn't understand the language. They didn't really understand how to use laptops. They didn't understand Microsoft Word. So like that capacity building in a way that is not condescending would be very, very helpful in order for them to really execute and take MCDO and the project that they're doing further, for it to be sustainable, because that's the whole purpose of it.
My project was on time banking. Over the summer, as part of the Master's in Public Administration and Development Practice program, I spent time in Bogota, Colombia. So part of the program is a field experience, which is what sets the program apart from others. And so I worked with a nonprofit organization down there called Social Lab that uses social entrepreneurship as a strategy to reduce poverty. So specifically what I did is I worked with one of the startups, the social entrepreneurship startups that they were incubating, called Minkai. And Minkai is an online time bank. So let's break this down a little bit. A time bank is a group or a program in which you join, and as part of this community, you exchange services with other members using an alternative currency in the form of time. The project that I did specifically, or the work that I did specifically, was designing a monitoring and evaluation system for this time bank. So the most rewarding aspect of this work for me was really strengthening a tool that I believe has a lot of potential for sustainable development, for community development, and also provides an alternative approach to economic development.
My current research is a formative assessment to inform nutrition education for women in smallholder farming communities in rural Senegal. So basically this is part of a larger project that aims to link increased horticultural production with nutrition education to improve health and nutrition outcomes and to foster community development. So my part of this is basically developing focus group guides and interview guides and a participant observation protocol that will be used in these villages in Senegal, in 10 different villages that we select from our study. And we'll kind of find out what are the current gaps in nutrition knowledge and what are the current infant and young child feeding practices practiced by mothers in these villages. And using that, we'll be able to assess those gaps and assess the current practices and develop a nutrition education curriculum that can try and alter those things through both text messages, through voice messages, and through other means of social marketing.
I worked with the Millennium Villages project in the summer in Sauri, Kenya, and I was responsible for investigating the effects of Ralstonia solanacearum, which is a soil pathogen. I was responsible for assessing the economic losses that the farmers faced, the knowledges that they possessed, and management techniques to control this soil bacterium. So the scope of my project was solely to collect qualitative data on this soil pathogen, and I wanted to give farmers the confidence and security that they would be able to grow tomatoes again. So essentially, I continued to collect soil and water samples after interviewing these greenhouse farmers and sent it off to a lab in Nairobi to assess. The conclusions were inconclusive, therefore the methods that they were practicing were not as good as they wanted it to be. Therefore, we found this soil pathogen in a bunch of different soil samples. So this could be developed further by collecting more soil samples, refining the techniques, and essentially coming up with some sort of protocol to give to these farmers if they were to continue growing these tomato crops.
I was an intern with the Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment, and my project is on the Emerging Markets Global Players project. So I looked at drivers and trends of foreign direct investment from 14 emerging markets all over the world. And I was interested in the subject because my background is on data analysis, and I really wanted to understand what are the drivers of investment in emerging economies. I think there are two tangible things that I took away from the research. The first is exposure to different data sources that I was not aware of in the past, and the second is working with the people in the Center for Sustainable Investment. So I think it's a great experience, and I learned a lot from my peers and my supervisors. I think the most rewarding aspect will be the report that we'll be publishing soon. So we are intending to publish our findings in a report with my supervisors, and hopefully that will be a lasting and substantial contribution to the field that we are looking at. And I think it's great to be able to contribute. So that's my greatest takeaway.